So, fun story, I had planned to make a video about Baldur's Gate 3 eventually as I uploaded more content to the channel, but given the 2023 is ending soon, I figured I bumped it up the list while it's still relevant. Am I chasing those VGA clicks? You bet, because my upload schedule is honestly deplorable and the algorithm favors constant content over taking 4 months to make video essays about tabletop, but I digress. So take a long rest and eat your scrambled Albert eggs because I'm going to sit here and tell you about how Baldur's Gate 3 enchanted me. Oh yeah, spoilers ahead, and this video isn't in any way sponsored by Larian Studios. Future me, roll the intro. Now, I'm no stranger to games based or inspired by D&D. I've played plenty of them over the course of my years of being a nerd. Some good, some not as good, and some not my cup of tea, but I've taken my time to play them. So when I say that Baldur's Gate 3 is the one that has gotten the closest to the feeling of playing an actual D&D campaign with a competent dungeon master, I don't say it lightly. It's easily my number 2 RPG of all time, number 1 being Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, but that's a whole other video that I promise I'll try to get out before the sequel drops in March. So back to the topic at hand. I'm gonna be honest, I did not play Baldur's Gate 1 or 2 before playing the third game. I know, blasphemous. But back when those games came out, I was just a dumb little kid with no access to the internet. I didn't learn those games existed until Enhanced Edition came out, and by then I was playing Neverwinter Nights online with my friends because that's all my third world broadband could support. I was also very skeptical of Baldur's Gate 3 as I only saw snippets of gameplay here and there, and most of it was the dialogue option compilations people would upload on YouTube, and I honestly wasn't sold back then. The game had a lot of jank to it. It uses 5th edition rules, which I'm not the fondest of, and the cast of characters was questionable. All in all, the game wasn't calling to me. I wound up getting it pre-release as a gift from my girlfriend, only so we could play co-op when it launched. And let me tell you, when it launched, I was swept off my feet. The presentation, the story, the characters, the set pieces, the music, the mechanics, the freedom to exploit those mechanics. Everything about this game is memorable. It makes a lasting impression of you, the like of which no other games in 2023 did. Hell, I played other 2023 releases this year and honestly I haven't gone back to them since Baldur's Gate 3 dropped. Mind you, this doesn't mean that they were bad games, it's just that Baldur's Gate 3 was a whole different beast. Player agency is rewarded and encouraged. Creative solutions to encounters are possible and feel rewarding just the same as winning the fight by the skin of your teeth because you refuse to use whatever gimmicks are in the area for your advantage. The scenarios are carefully constructed, and dungeon progress and feel the way a dungeon master's carefully prepared gauntlet would. Someone at Larian actually sat down and said, okay, how many goblins can I put in this area so that the encounter is still challenging but not impossible at level 2? Some fights you can just skip through by talking yourself out of them, and even some bosses other RPGs would have made mandatory. Beating the crap out of a crazy surgeon and his minions is just as possible as telling said surgeon to, yeah, that. The game gives you plenty of potential to be a force of good or evil, and taking any of the two paths feels just as rewarding as the other 90% of the time. There's even a whole campaign option centered around it with the Dark Urge origin story. Not to mention that there's also a lot of endings, not just for your companion characters, but also for the world in general, depending on your choices. And speaking of, all of the companion characters feel deep. Every character has a story as complex and emotional as the others, except maybe Halsin, who joins you in the tail end of Act 2 and thus gets less time to develop. Characters I initially thought I wouldn't bother carrying around ended up becoming cornerstones of my party. A lot of time was taken to make them their own person, with their own opinions and beliefs that the player may change with their choice of words and actions, though some of them have lines that they will never cross. By the end of the game, it's very likely that those characters are no longer the same person you met on Act 1, for better or worse. As their story progresses, their motives and goals can be challenged or twisted by yourself or their circumstances. My favorite example is Lae'zel, who she can go from being a blind, bull-headed servant of Blackhead to aiding the rebellion against her, seeking to liberate their people from the Lich Queen's tyranny and falsehoods. Astarion is a close second, and the passion that the voice actors put into each character made them all feel alive. Neil absolutely deserved the award for his performance as a friendly neighborhood vampire spawn.
Let me do it. They sound disgusting.
What in the sweet hells were you thinking? Activating that lot? I was right there!
Believed I was enough. Just the way I am.
Everything related to the Forgotten Realms setting was given special care. The lore, the geography, historical events the game references, mythological figures such as Elminster and Bolo make appearances that manage to be accurate depictions of their character without taking away from the player's relevance to the story. Sure, they may be an archmaiden bard known far and wide throughout the Sword Coast, but this isn't their story, it's the players. The game is a love letter to its tabletop counterpart, and it's a shame knowing that it'll be a very long time before we get anything of the same quality again. Larian was given the license by Wizard of the Coast with very little hope for the project, and created something any D&D enthusiast can enjoy, for those who only enter the hobby because of Stranger Things to those who have been playing for decades. The game isn't without flaws, of course. There were a few bugs at launch that Larian worked towards fixing with total transparency towards the community, making several quality of life improvements with each patch. They even added a prologue to the story completely free, bringing back the voice actors of the companion characters to reprise their roles, almost as a sign of gratefulness towards the community that followed and supported the game throughout the years. My only gripe with the game is that the third act is notably less polished than Acts 1 and 2, which I hope will be improved in the future as Larian continues to work on improving the game well past its launch date without charging anything extra, something only a handful of developers do nowadays. If you like D&D, you'll like Baldur's Gate 3. If you like tactical combat games, you'll like Baldur's Gate 3. If you like high fantasy, you'll like Baldur's Gate 3. If you like dating sims, you'll like Baldur's Gate 3. I know I sound like a page shield saying this, but this is just one of the games you have to try for yourself to understand why so many people are currently flocking towards it. I came in expecting a passable RPG experience that I'd sink maybe 100 hours into before letting it gather dust in my Steam library. And I can't say I've been able to walk out of it yet, because I'm still playing through the story again and again as different characters trying out new builds and features as they come out. And that's my piece, what I wanted to say about this award-winning title before the turn of the year. Don't worry, I will continue making content focused on tabletop games, hopefully more frequently if things go well this coming 2024. Thank you for sticking with me thus far, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
As regards to your own morbid little fantasies, I'm sure they're nothing to worry about. So long as they remain fantasies.